Thank you. Good morning, honorable members.
Recording in progress.
Our support staff, everybody is on the platform. Today we are meeting with the Department of Social Development, led by Honorable Lindiwe Zulu, and its agency, the South African Social Security Agency, popularly known as SASSA. I'll say more about that, but you are all welcome. Everybody on the platform, you are all welcome to this meeting. But can I check, do we have any apologies machine?
Yes, good morning, Chair. We do have apologies. We received an apology from the Deputy Minister of Social Development, Ms. B. Zulu. We also have an apology from Ms. E.D. Peters and Ms. M.C. Dikale. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Peters will be joining. She's in another meeting. She will be joining us.
Okay, Chair.
Thank you. And Honorable Dikale is out of the country. Okay, thank you. Once more, let me welcome you, Honorable Minister Lindiwe Zulu. Thank you so much, Minister, for coming to the committee and share some of the issues that the committee has asked you to deal with. And I must say that this is the minister who's always willing to come before this committee, showing the importance of this department and in dealing with the lives of our people. We appreciate that very much, Minister. So what is this? You remember that there was the Minister of Finance on the 26th of October presented what we call the midterm budget. And as a follow-up on that, this committee dealt with the DORAP, the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, which was passed by Parliament National Assembly on Wednesday. So after that, as part of the work that we must do after the midterm budget by the minister, we must deal with the 2022 Adjustment Appropriation Bill. What is this? By and large, these are the changes which are happening on the appropriations that were passed by the National Parliament. So this appropriation bill deals with those changes between and amongst departments, SOEs, agencies, and so on and so forth. So that's the background to that. And then we saw that in this department there are changes that are taking place. And then we requested the department and the South African Social Security Agency to come and share with this committee, interact with the committee. As you know, or members, there were questions and issues that we directed the department and SASSA to reflect on. So that's why we're here. And once more, thank you, everybody. I will then request that the Honorable Minister comes in. Honorable Minister, you will deal with everybody, introduce them, and then maximum 45 minutes, and then you'll bring the meeting back to us. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister.
Chair, good morning.
Yes, yes.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable members. My apologies, this is a little bit quick. The Minister is joining. I know I just got off the line with her. She's just having a bit of a connectivity challenge. She's load shedding at the moment.
Okay.
So, apologies for that.
Okay, okay. Mr. Chachayo, so you say we must give the Honorable Minister a few minutes.
Chair, it's Mr. Mkhulu here. Sorry, I'm using Fletcher's laptop. Yes,
Yeah.
if it's okay, Honorable Chair, just 1 minute, I'm going to reach out again.
Okay, let's just give the minister 1 or 2 minutes, and if she's still struggling, Macingwane, you'll have to come in. Welcome, DJ, and your team. DG.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, yes. So let me just quickly check, Honorable Chair. If you could just
I've managed, Chair. Excuse me.
Okay, okay.
Yes, my sincere apology. We had load shedding here, so it was a bit difficult for me to join. I'll use the cell phone instead of the other gadgets. Thank you.
Okay, before you come in, Honorable Minister, let me make the I'm not sure whether you heard me, Minister, when I was talking. You're still not.
No, I didn't hear you at all, Chair.
No. Then I need to repeat this. Obviously, you are coming in here, the department and the SASSA is a follow-up to the invitation that we sent to our good selves to share certain issues, to share with the committee some of the issues that the committee had raised. But we then said that from as a committee, we are quite grateful that whenever you are asked to interact with the committee, you are always here. We appreciate that. And it's a good sign. We are dealing with a very important department, a department which is about the poorest of the poor of this country. And as you know, that this government cares a lot about them. So we really interact. We know there are challenges, but we say that those challenges, we must be able to together try to deal with them and see how we make sure that at the end of the day, we're able to provide the safety net that your department and your agencies are responsible for. So with those few words, I then said we'll give the minister and her team about 45 minutes for the presentation. And then after that, I'll allow the honorable members to comment, raise questions. And then after that, you will come back again responding to those issues and comments which would have been made by the honorable members. Back to you, Honorable Minister. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriation, Honorable Sfiso Buthelezi. Can I request that I switch off my video? At least you can see that it is me. It's not a robot.
Yeah, perfect.
If I can just switch off my video so that I don't doesn't keep on going up and down.
Perfect, no problem.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members of the Standing Committee on Appropriations, the Deputy Minister. I'm not sure if the Deputy Minister is here. I'm expecting that the Deputy Minister should be here. The Acting Director General of Social Development, Mr. Mkhulu, and of course the Chief Executive Officers, both of SASSA and NDA. For SASSA, Dotsi Memela Kambula, and for NDA, Mr. Bongani Magongo, senior office managers and officials of the department and its entities. We are a portfolio. As usual, we try to talk about the fact that we're portfolio because we're still trying to really act in unison, in coordination and in cooperation, not only at national level, but also at provincial level. I wish a good morning to everybody who is in this meeting today on the Adjustments Appropriations Bill that was tabled by Minister of Finance during the medium-term budget policy statement on the 26th of October 2022. While the department will render a detailed presentation on key issues that are highlighted in your correspondence, please allow me to raise a number of pertinent issues for consideration and counsel of this honorable committee. We always appreciate your counsel. I note and share the committee's concerns about the amount of 1.7 billion that was declared unspent funds on the COVID-19 social relief of distress, which you've also referred to, not necessarily as in the specific, but in saying that this is money that is supposed to support and lift our people from poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This is particularly so because the Department of Social Development is the front line of pandemic-induced poverty, food insecurity, growing unemployment that are worsened by climate-related disasters and unbearable cost of living. Honorable Chairperson, as you will hear from the detailed presentation that is to follow, the main reason for the under expenditure on the COVID-19 was not due to lack of demand, but the limited scope and stricter eligibility criteria that accompany our allocation. And I think the department and SASSA will go into depth about that. Both of these factors resulted in the exclusion of a huge number of applicants from the benefit. Added to this was the introduction of the bank verification process as part of the eligibility requirements. And I hope that the department, and I'm expecting that the department must also explain this, because honorable members and chair, we get under pressure as a department, both from the side of Treasury, but also as well as the side of the Auditor General. And I'm hoping that the department and SASSA will elaborate on this. This meant that many people who were already experiencing poverty were rendered even more precarious. Meanwhile, we verily suspect that some who were previously employed and living above the poverty line now find themselves incomeless owing to the slow economic growth and the economic outlook. This population is joining the many who are finding it impossible to access the COVID-19 SRD benefit owing to the bank verification process. At the peak of the pandemic, and before the introduction of the means tests, which excluded a significant number of beneficiaries who would have otherwise been eligible to receive this benefit, SASSA was paying over 10 million eligible applicants. I'm short of saying this hopeful picture had been diminished by the structural reversal that have been imposed on the COVID-19 SRD. As you will learn from the presentations, we have since taken important decisions to address the undesirable decline in the number of eligible applicants. To this end, I brought this matter to the attention of both the President and the Minister of Finance. They both agreed with our request for the means test threshold to be amended. But obviously, the department and SASSA will elaborate on the other nitty-gritties and the bureaucracies and the demands that comes with even changing the means test and all that. I will leave that to the department. Consequently, this was affected in August this year, and we are watching the cause effect data. And by the way, I have also indicated to SASSA and the department that we need to take the lessons that have been learned from this for purposes of ensuring that in the future such things don't repeat themselves. I'm expecting SASSA in particular to come back with a report to myself as well as the department. Preliminarily, I can say that we are starting to see a steady increase in the number of eligible applicants since the implementation of the amended regulations, which are enabling us to target the poorest and most vulnerable, those who live below the poverty line in particular. Needless to say, targeted social safety nets are most effective when they cater those most in need in our society. And still on this matter, Honorable Chair and members, I take this opportunity to ask you to invite the National Treasury to appear before the Honorable Committee on this subject. As the Honorable Committee will note, we are making progress on investigations that relate to the public servants who were flagged by the Auditor General to have unduly benefited from the COVID-19 SID benefit. Following this, SASSA undertook a process of review all suspected cases as per the process outlined in the Social Assistance Act. And may I indicate, Chairperson, that as an executive, as a minister, I'm terribly unhappy with the delays and the bureaucracy, again, that has to make people to be accountable. Again, I've indicated to SASSA that I need this process to be speeded up so that those that have been doing this must be taken to task, and they must account. And obviously these are in other departments, so it doesn't necessarily make it easy for us. But I've said to SASSA, I'm not happy with the slow pace of the process of doing that. We have sought the assistance of the Department of Public Service and Administration and the Public Service Commission in monitoring the implementing financial recovery and duly instituting disciplinary action. And on a related matter, I'm pleased to inform the committee that we are improving the agility of our systems, because data collection has always been the integral part of SASSA's core business. Without the data we collect, we cannot identify risk and act in timely and targeted fashion. Technological advances and automation means that invaluable data that we generate as we implement our mandate is being translated into future programs improvement. And you will see that as they present in some of the slides, where we even break down as to who is getting this money, where are they, what level of education they are, that I leave to SASSA. In this regard, SASSA has developed the application program interface, which is API, which is used to interface with databases, including the National Population Register of the Department of Home Affairs, to confirm identity and life status, as well as PESAL, which again, PESAL is another something that I'm saying to SASSA we need to work on, and the Government Employee Pension Fund. I reassure you here that these measures are strengthening SASSA's ability to validate information on grants applicants' incomes. Equally, owing to the innovative initiative, we regularly monitor changes in beneficiaries' employment circumstances. Previously, this was not the case. SASSA has also implemented interfaces to perform bank account verifications and implementation of biometric identification for SASSA and employees as part of the multi-factor authentication requirements for access to SASSA corporate system, in particular SOCPEN. Plans to work with the Department of Home Affairs to harvest and validate facial recognition as alternative biometric identification. This issue of biometric identification and using technology today, I must say that when SASSA started it, there was a whole lot of resistance, even from the staff, to get this going. But this is the only way we can also make sure that firstly, money goes to the right people, but also secure the data and secure the information that resides within SASSA. Chairperson, without much ado, please receive the department's presentation on the briefing on the Adjustments Appropriation Bill 2022 for your due consideration and engagement. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I hand over to you.
Minister, thank you so much. So you please continue with your troops. I only want the meeting at about 2:10. So whoever must come in, you command.
Thank you. Over to the acting DG. And I know you're going to be on me about this acting DG story, but he's here. Thank you.
In fact,
I knew. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, and the Minister. And I think the Minister has really put the context. What I will do is just to, I suppose, make 1 or 2 points as we get into the heart of the presentation. I would kindly request the Secretary to please allow Fani. Oh, you got it. If you could go to the second slide. It's a fairly short presentation, Honorable Chair, and we will share it. The presentation. I'm not going to go to the outline because we are specifically responding to the direct requests from the committee insofar as reporting on a number of areas, the 1.7 billion rand declared unspent funds, as well as the performance of the SRD, as well as the reprioritization of funding to other departments, as well as the non-financial and financial performance of the department as it relates to Q2. I must just highlight, Chair, on that, go to the slide before that. No, the next slide, sorry. Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. I think without getting into much detail, our quest is certainly to ensure that we provide care and support services to vulnerable groups through the various mechanisms that we implement as a department, and primarily to improve the quality of life of the people that we serve. And in order to do this, the contextual analysis or the operating environment to which we operate, to which we have to provide these services, becomes quite important, particularly the areas around the triple challenges that we face and how we address those: slow economic growth, and most importantly, the levels of poverty, which continue to be at very bad levels, as well as other matters such as climate change, etc., are all important variables that impact on the manner in which we provide our services as a department, as a portfolio, rather, inclusive of our agencies. And I think these are important aspects. Just on the climate change aspect, we did request additional funding from Treasury through the unavoidable and unforeseen expenditure, to which we have been able to provide to KZN to ensure that we assist those persons who are who are victims, rather, of the floods out in KZN. And of course, this requires for us to be very innovative, to put systems in place to work in what we call the window, in such a way that we are able to address the challenges that are on the ground much more swiftly and much more effectively. And in order to do this, of course, you would know that well, when we took to one of the aspects, which is largely around the basic income grant, that we've also introduced, not introduced, but working towards introduction, and we've done some policy work around this, which we will be launching in the next few days. This is really just to indicate the extent to which we've moved on introducing the basic income grant. And I think what has assisted us is the extension of the current 350 grant into the next financial year. We are currently working on the eligibility criteria to make it a much more, I suppose, seamless eligibility criteria, but at the same time working within the context of the directives, or for lack of a better word, the conditions, as they call them, in the Treasury, which are very stringent conditions, I must say, Honourable Chair, in order for us to get the right people to receive the grants. I think that that's an important aspect. We have had a lot of backlash around the means testing that we've implemented, and I think that we were in a way forced to implement the kind of measures that we put in, and those were essentially called legal conditions by the Treasury. And had we not implemented such so-called legal conditions, it was very clear in black and white that they were not going to give us the money for the current iteration of the grant. We're in conversations with them to try and see how best we can avert this, because we are indeed concerned at the fact that a lot less people have received the 350 grants in the current iteration than it was in the previous two iterations. And these are things that we are facing consistently, including the concerns raised by the Auditor General, particularly around data sharing. Those are important aspects that we are still looking at the moment, with the view of ensuring that the next iteration, which starts in March April rather 2023, is a much more stronger process that we take forward, but equally seamless for applicants. We don't want to start late as we did this current iteration. We want to make sure that we move ahead as swiftly as possible. So as we continue in our pursuit to create a better life, rather, and improve the conditions of living for all peoples, we continue to work within the context of partnerships, working with the NGOs, the private sector, etc., to ensure that we're able to effectively dispense our work. So without, if you can go to the next slide, we'll now get into some of the more detailed aspects around the questions that have been asked by the committee. I'll ask Fanny to take us through this part, and then our colleagues from SASSA will come in as well a little later.
Thank you, and good morning, Honourable Minister, Chairperson, members. Right. So, in terms of the adjusted estimates for DSD for this financial year, there was essentially three areas where we use the declared savings in different areas. So the first one is what the committee is requesting in terms of 1.7 billion declared unspent funds. This is actually the balance of a combination of various things. The initial amount that was a declared saving that was supposed to be in our books, is in our books currently, is because of the low uptake of the 350 grant currently that we have on the SRD. Now, initial target was that we could pay 10 million beneficiaries on a monthly basis, but we're currently sitting at 60% of that. Now, this is actually now the result of such underpayments or lesser payments in terms of beneficiaries that we've done since April up till now. So that's what the reason for the 1.7 declared unspent funds for this financial year SRD. The second one is we've made a case to National Treasury to do a write-off of our social assistance grant debtors. Now, the debtors book's currently sitting at a region of 1.1, 1.2 billion. Now, in the past, we've requested again this from National Treasury, and because of these undeclared unspent funds on the SRD, they thought it good that to grant us the approval to write off an amount of 538 million. So at least our debt book is coming down to almost 50% in terms of this. Then the third portion is the shifting between votes. Now, this is the issue that we had with the National Treasury because the budget process was late. So they could initially just say, we take the 6 billion away and we just reallocated as part of the budget process, Department of Defense and Department of Public Enterprises for Transnet. But this were late requests from both departments. So the only way that Treasury could give funding for this department was to put it in our books as shift between votes. And therefore, the money for the 755 million for defense to assist them in extended deployment as part of the community mission in Mozambique, the 2.9 billion for Transnet to repair some assets constructed that's damaged by the KZN floods was not included in our books. That was the way that really could feel that they could give their funding for them. So essentially, this is the 6 billion, the net of the 6 billion that we've put in our Appropriations Act, declared unsaving. Then we can see the money that was shifted from the various grants for the write-offs, 538, the 5.6 social income space that was also then as a declared saving for this financial year. Now the unspent 1.7, just to give the committee some detailed background. Remember, we were given the allocation of 44 billion to target 10 million beneficiaries per month for the payment for the continuation of the SRD grant. Then since April to October, SASSA has committed 16 billion to provide for those who have been approved between April and October. And we did some iterations in terms of the full financial year. And if we continue on the same means, test the same regulations in terms of the same trend analysis of the current beneficiaries, we will pay about 8 million applicants or beneficiaries for the duration of this financial year. We're looking currently at a total cost for the financial year between 31 and 32 billion. So that would also give you an indication that we will still have underspending in terms of the SRD grant for this financial year if we continue on the same trend. Now, the payment backlog currently is what we've tried to just give an illustration that payments that that was delayed from April, May, and June was done in June. It was paid in perspective in terms of back pay. So when an application was approved on the system, you would get that payment from that specific date. Doesn't matter when we will pay it, but it will be a back date. And then we just give the dates when it was approved and when it will be paid in the various months for this. This is just an indication how that we pay the SRD. You can clearly see in July, we start with 3 billion, then it went down 1 billion, then 3.8, 5.6 billion for the financial year or per month. for this financial year. For April, May, and June, there was very little payments done. The stats that we want to give to the committee is just basically to see in terms of the applicants that was approved versus what was paid. We have it per month. We omitted to give the one that was actually the target of the 10 million. It's a clear indication how far below we are in terms of the 10 million target we were supposed to achieve on a monthly basis. Now, it reached between 5 million, 6 million in terms of this. So we're not reaching that target of 10 million beneficiaries for payments. But at least in terms of the one that was approved, you can look at the percentage that we paid. It's actually well and good in terms of we've tried to almost do 100% payment of what was approved in previous months. Then we also felt it good to give you some information on the applicants that we've paid. We split it per male and female. You can see clearly there's more female than males in terms of the applicants in terms of SRD. We also did applications by different asylum seekers in terms of the different areas. The Angolan asylum seekers were sit in Zimbabwe. You can actually see the ones there in the province. And also then looking at the various age groups. You can clearly see our age group between 20 and 35 is the most applicants that we paid since April, and the rest is far below in terms of that. We also give you information with the education level. You can see no schooling is 800,000. Primary school is 1 million. Grade 10 is 5 million. Grade 12 is 5.2 million, and tertiary is 700,000. So a total of 12.9 million. This is just the current payments in terms of that we've done. Total bank account that we had is 472, and you can see the clients have been cancelled, duplicate bank accounts, returned by banks, failed by bank, pending bank verification to be deferred. So total unpaid is 1.3 million. The current challenges faced by SASSA in terms of the payment of SRD. So there was the SRD appeals website, which is hosted by ourselves, which was activated on the 27th of June. Then the appeals process for the new iteration on COVID-19 is integrated with the electronic and automated platform used for lodging, verification, and processing of the SRD by SASSA. We also looked at the integration lessons, the burden of the client applicants as the personal information are preloaded on the system, and the lodging of an appeals are accordingly quick and easy. And there you can see the numbers as of 12th of October, we had 5.2 million appeals for the SRD, and you can see the number of appeal cases since April, and it's coming down in July. Now, these appeal cases is currently being dealt with BSD environment with the independent appeals units. They're looking at the appeals, they're considering this, they're looking at the reasons for declining, as by SASSA, and also looking at the relevant updated information at the disposal of the prescribed qualified material. Now, the independent tribunal finalized all appeals related to the June 2022. These exclude caregivers which are processed by SASSA. Some further challenges. The system only went live in June 2022. There was an immediate backlog of 3 months since April. As I said, though what was paid in June was all applicants that was approved. It was paid in perspective from April for these applicants. Then there was 2 errors that were picked up in the algorithms. Bank accounts had incorrectly included CSG income in their scripts, resulting in many of CSG beneficiaries being excluded. These scripts need to be rewritten. This was done in August 2020.
Hey, thanks, I'm
Honorable members, on the platform.
Hey, I don't know the fruit lab of what. Fruit lab, yeah.
Honorable members, please mute your gadgets. Mute your gadgets. Sorry, sir. I just needed to take care of this. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So as I said, this was corrected in August 2022. And currently in the process of revalidating April to July information that will be done in November. Then there's also some procurement challenges. There is a lack of certainty about the future of this grant, and we do know that the grant has now been extended for another financial year. But it gives us some kind of a difficulty in contracting service providers, especially looking at the call center or IT support. In terms of the maintenance, it's currently a challenge. You will recall that SAS has been given 500 million 2 years ago for the maintenance for an IT system. Now, since then, nothing additional has been received. We don't have a continuation of this. We cannot maintain our current systems in terms of this. I've already spoken that the grant is only now being extended for 23-24. And we haven't received yet the allocation letters from Treasury, which will give us indication whether this grant is only for 1 year or whether it's for the next 3 financial years. We're also uncertain about the amount that will be allocated to us for the next financial year. Then the reprioritization. It was not really a reprioritization, Chairperson, in terms of this money that we allegedly gave to Defence and Transnet. The initial engagement that we had with Treasury was that it was be a declared saving of about 6 million, less the amount that was already approved for the write-offs of the social assistance debtors. That would leave up somewhere around 5.4 billion. That was the initial agreement. Then Treasury came to us to say there's 2 funding requests from both Defence and from public enterprises for additional funding. One relates now to assets and infrastructure, which requires 2.9 billion. And the one way to correct it, because they almost ended the budget process for the medium term, one way of supporting this was to include in our budgets and giving it from our vote to their vote. The same principle for Defence, although the numbers are 755 million for this. So the only way that Treasury could basically do it as part of the budget process was to put in our books as shifting between votes. But there was engagement with us in terms of this. Just the timing issue for allocating this funding was not in favor of National Treasury. And the only way that you could do that was by shifting between votes in terms of this funding. Let me then get to the last portion of the presentation, which reflects on the financial and non-financial performance of Q2 for this department. And also, what are we doing to ensure that we do not overspend or underspend for this financial year? First of all, if we look at the performance information, number of targets that we achieved in Q2 was 48. There were 70 that was unachieved or not achieved. Total, sorry, apologies, Jay. Number of targets that we had 65, and that was 74% achievable in terms of the Q2. One you just could see on this slide that we actually regressed from Q1. Q1 gave 80% achievement, Q2 a 74% achievement. And in our attachments, in terms of that we've also circulated, there's clearly the ones that we've not achieved. We haven't put it in this high-level presentation. But what we've tried to do to ensure that we achieve the targets is that we've initiated a lot of automated processes in the monitoring of our targets of all the various managers in the department. We also set predetermined objectives. We've instituted a performance review sessions at the branch level, which means it's going down to the branch, the chief director, the directorate. We have one-to-one sessions with all of these officials or managers to ensure that we monitor and we ensure that we institute early warning systems to ensure that our targets are achieved. We recently had a second quarter performance review session on the 7th of November. It was a quite detailed session. We engaged robustly and ensure that so everybody accounts in terms of targets not met, what are the corrective steps that are taken to ensure that these targets are not left behind in terms of for the financial year. Then also we have corrective actions have been identified. We've already started to implement some of those already in the Q3, and Q4 will be finalized then. So we will ensure that all targets are ultimately met in the financial year. And when we do our Q3, we clearly see that there will be an achievement or an increase in terms of their targets. Then just very last on our financial performance. That's for Q2. Clearly, it's under spending currently because of the SRD 350 grant. We haven't paid since April. That's why there's only a 45% spending. The slide clearly indicates just for the various programs in our economic classification. You see that all of the main programs are actually spending for 50% or above in terms of the average spending, except for social assistance. The compensation of employees, we're currently sitting at 48.8% spending, which is in line. Our operational budget, our goods and services, actually more than the 50%, 54% spending. The same with our CAPEX. So we are monitoring all our project plans that we've planned for the financial year. We are doing regular meetings with all the various managers to ensure that our procurement plans are actually monitored and updated on a monthly basis. Just in terms of the reasons currently for high and low spending, Chair, again, we're sitting with the high spending of administration as for the last financial year. The pressure is on us to pay for the toll-free line to 350. It's a toll-free service that's been bought back by Telco to us, so we have to pay this account in terms of this. However, we are busy currently with SASSA engaging them for them to take over this bill because we cannot sustain this commitment in our books for the financial year. My understanding is that we really have progressed in terms of this. They will take over this account. I'm not going to talk about the social assistance of the 36. I think we've exhausted the explanations of the 350 grant because it's low spending because of that. The Social Security Program 3, only 26% spending. Yes, it's low because of some of the things will only happen in the fourth quarter of the financial year. There was issues with the sourcing of some of the services and appointment of service providers, but Q3 and Q4, it will increase in terms of the expenditure. The program was also delayed by to move from a different building to our building currently, so everybody is now housed in the same building. So it impacted about 2 to 3 weeks of service delivery and normal things in terms of this, but the expenditure will increase. For our line function in terms of welfare services, it's currently almost in line with the 50% spending. There will be an increase currently on the GBV Command Center. We have signed a new agreement with a service provider for the continuation of the GBV Command Center in terms of the call center lines. The contract is currently more than what the outgoing contract has costed us, so there will be a significant increase in this expenditure for the remainder of the financial year. Then obviously some of the other outreach programs that we're looking at that will still continue will be happening in the third and fourth quarter. It's October month. The older person's golden scans, which is scheduled for the end of the month, the beginning of December. Also the 16 days of activism. For program 5, our community development area is also in line with average spending. One of the achievements that they did in Q2 was the hosting of the Presidential Social Sector Summit in Gauteng. It did cost us quite an amount of money in terms of this. And then in the third quarter, we're also going to finalize the contract with the rollout of the new NPS system. We are in the final stages of signing the contract. There's also going to be an estimated significant amount of money that this unit will carry for the duration of this contract. Then very lastly, just in terms of recommendations, we want the committee to note once the decrease to our budget baseline for the 2022-23 financial year, that's what we've presented and was published in cabinet. We also want to take note of how the 1.7 billion declared savings came about, and also the performance challenges that was implemented in terms of the SRB grant currently and now developed by SASSA. Then the reallocation method that was imposed on us for the funding of the transit and defence, and also note the Q2 performance of the DST for this financial year. Chairperson, thank you very much.
No, thanks, Chair. Just before we sort of work towards the end, I want to check whether the CEO of SASSA has any inputs to make, and the colleagues from SASSA very quickly.
Thank you very much, DG. Honorable Chair, honorable members. I just thought I need to highlight a few particular issues, and Brenton can talk to some of the stuff. But the fact of the matter is that we are a creature that is guided by regulations in terms of what we can or cannot do. We're excited about the fact that at least this time the announcement has been done in time, and we'll be able to engage on all the contracts that we need to put in place for us to be able to be effective in terms of the work that we do, because the starting and stopping and the timing of the decisions does impact on how we actually contract with all the other stakeholders that we work with, which does have an impact. So one is hoping that we will also continue to relook at the regulations so that we can make sure that we can increase on the numbers, because currently we're beginning to see a tick up even in terms of the applications. Just for November, the applications that we've received have ticked up again to 30 million, which indicates that more and more people are beginning to get the hang of the process that we currently are using. So the regulations and the MINS test are the areas that we believe are the ones that have impact on the numbers being where they are, and we're hoping that there's going to be a huge improvement going forward. But also the fact that we can then have enough time going forward for us to make sure that all the other contracts are signed off and because of the decisions being made on time, I think that is going to be extremely helpful. I'll give Brenton another 2 minutes just to talk to some of the challenges we've had with regards to the payment side. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Gigi. And thanks, Minister.
Thanks, CEO. Good morning, honourable members. Good morning, Minister and colleagues. From the, my apologies, let me just put my camera on. I think, as the CEO mentioned, honourable members, one of our biggest challenges are the sort of short-term provisions for the grant, noting that we have to issue tenders for hundreds of millions of, but it's about 70 odd million rand a year for a call centre, for example, which if you do it over multi-years is more than 100 million rand over a period. And when you issue such large tenders on a very short-term basis, they become very difficult to manage. So that does create these sort of startup hiccups that we do see in the beginning. So even this round, I know CEO said we got an early indication that the grant is extended, but procurement rules prohibits us from doing anything until we have a budget. You're not allowed to put out any tender until you have a confirmed budget for a particular function. And so since so even though we know it's going to be extended, we still do need to get a budget allocation. As the CFO of DST said earlier on, in the current year, we've been allocated no money for the administration of this, which literally meant then we had to go and chop money off other areas of the grants. And so what we are doing is we're beginning to compromise the grant system as a whole to fund the sort of the expansion of the SRD which is very difficult. And I would almost go as far as to say it is a little unreasonable to expect an agency to grow its clients from 13 million by another 10 million on the same budget that it previously had. So we do want to appeal to the committee to when you do have deliberations on the budgets, to consider ensuring that an adequate administration budget is provided for SASSA. Just on one of the slides the CFO presented, we're seeing a huge uptake on the cash send options. So the cash send option is the most expensive payment method that's available. Normally we would pay people into the bank accounts. That wouldn't cost us anything, but when you pay methods via cash send, it costs us on average between 7 rands and 8 rands to do that per payment. Clients obviously prefer that because when they get the money in their bank accounts, they have to pay their own bank fees. If you get the money via cash send, they get the full amount of the money. Last year we only paid about 40,000 or so on cash send. This year we're already at 100,000, but we already have requests exceeding 500,000 on that. So that again is easily something that could result in, on our administrative budget, result in large overspending if we don't get funding for that. Otherwise, we would have to cancel the cash send options next year if the uptake is that large, but we don't get any funding for that. Thanks, CEO.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Chair. I think Brenton sort of explained the I suppose process insofar as the contracts are concerned, and the implication that the delays in getting the actual budget allocation or allocation letters, as it were, would have. But let me just say two things, Chair. One is, as we close off our part, one is, I think finally started to talk to it, the shifting of funds between the votes, and how it happened that money was moved from TSD to the other departments, defense and public works in this, public enterprises in this case, is a process that was essentially done by the Treasury. And yes, some level of participation, particularly through SASSA, may have been the case, but it wasn't a detailed level of participation, especially at our level. And it was the Treasury's determination to indicate exactly where the money would go because of the late budget process that was started on that side. But also, I just want to highlight now this part. I think we are conscious of the fact that when you say you've declared unspent funds, it sends a sort of negative message across to the public, and in a way it leaves a bad taste to the public, especially in the current space that we're in terms of the socioeconomic space that we find ourselves in as a country in the main. But I think an important point to point out here is that our projections were pretty clear in terms of the allocation provided, which was 44 billion rand for the current financial year. We were clear that we had wanted to pay 10 million people. However, the underspending was as a cause of the stringent conditions that we had to follow, and therefore we were not able to take all 10.5 million people. We're sitting at 7.1 or so now million, but it's 8.1, and it's progressing towards the 10 million mark. But I think it's important to just really highlight that it's the implication of the conditions that we put on, and I think it is very clear to us that if you don't move with these conditions, you're not going to. We would have not even had the 350 grant had we not succumbed to the specific conditions, legal conditions, as it were, as imposed by the Treasury. But I think what's important is that we are in the stage now of looking at the new iteration and certainly trying to ensure that we have a much more seamless process. Of course, what we would have loved to do is to have a much higher paying grant, at least at the poverty line, just above that, we would pay more people. And I think what this exercise has sort of taught us is that there is financial space to move around to provide for the 350 granted, even possibly at a slightly higher level where possible. But we have to navigate the difficulties of the fiscal space that we are in. But we would love to have a much higher paying SRD grant than 350, given the high cost of living that we currently have now. One of the other things that we are meant to do in this presentation, which I think is something that we can share with the members, I suppose two things. One was to talk to the quarterly performance, the second quarter performance, cumulative performance of SASSA. We didn't do that. We focused more on the DSD performance, but if honorable members would like that, we can certainly share it. And I think the other thing that we didn't put across very strongly, which is something we can share with honorable members, is actually the impact that the River grant is having on the ground in terms of not addressing completely, but alleviating poverty to some extent. I always make the point that the NDP says that we should have a Gini coefficient of 0.60, and I think we're sitting at 0.68 now, right? 4 or 5. But at some point, within a short space of time, we're able to shift down the Gini coefficient at least by, I think, from 0.68 to 0.65, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it was because of the impact of the 350 grant, but also the increase during that short period of time that we had on other grants. And I think, we were very close to reaching what the NDP suggests we should have in terms of Gini coefficient by 2030. So, Honourable Chair, I think we remain committed to this cause and ensuring that we put very solid systems in place to adequately adjudicate the funding towards those that need it, our people rather than need it, to alleviate at least some levels of poverty. What we are conscious of is that the grant certainly doesn't create jobs. But we have programs actually as a DSD that actually work towards job creation. But what the grant certainly does do is address some aspects of inequality and certainly does address some aspects of poverty. But let me leave it at that, Honourable Chair, and thank you very much, Honourable Members. Minister, thank you.
Honourable Minister, done. So okay, I take it the meeting is back is back to us.
Yes, Chair, back to you. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Honorable members, you know how we do it. Let me get indications. Honorable members would like to interact with the
Matafa.
Honorable Matafa. Honorable members, I'm waiting to hear who would like to.
I've raised my hand, guys, so Chair.
We know how we do it, honorable members. Please shout at me. We do allow it here. Honorable Kaiso. Next. Another honorable member.
Peters.
Honorable Peters. Another honorable member.
Sheikh Imam Chairperson, I raise my hand. Good morning to you.
Honorable Sheikh, you know how we do it here. I always tell you, please shout at me.
Oh, can I shout? Okay.
Yeah. No, we always do that.
I see you used to getting shouted.
Yeah. Sheikh, okay. Good morning, Honorable Sheikh. Any other honorable member? Okay. Okay, Honorable Matafa, just time yourselves. I'm not going to time you today, but be conscious of the time, honorable members. Straight to the point, Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, with your permission, may I leave my video off? My network is unstable. I've been kicked out of the meeting twice already.
No, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me take this opportunity to greet the Minister, the acting DG and the team, and further welcome the presentation. But most importantly, Chair, is to welcome the remarks in the beginning that were made by the Minister. The remarks are politically and administratively correct, which has actually taken away a lot of questions that I would have had and would have posed. Chair, having said that, let me also just start maybe by checking on the SRD grant. besides the loss of about 3 million individuals that were benefiting from the grant, can maybe we be taken into confidence what other challenges are faced by applicants and the department in the application process, maybe from start to a point where the application is approved? And having spoken of the 3 million, besides the appeals process, that would naturally be initiated by the person who had been rejected, is there any other effort from the department to try and see that these 3 or 4 million odd individuals that would have received the first round of the grant were not unfairly excluded? I'm not sure if whether there is such a process or is there any thought around it. I'd really appreciate it if maybe we can be informed of any such effort. And secondly, maybe it's just to check. I'm not sure whether will it fall in the purview of the department, whether they would have maybe done an analysis to see to what extent has the SRD grant contributed to economic recovery and growth. As we are spending, we normally oversight for impact. Maybe we just wanted to find out. It could be maybe a response based on the lifting of people out of poverty or something like that. But if maybe we can get a view from the department, I'll really appreciate that. On the issue of unspent funds, I take the input by the acting DG that calling it a saving, maybe it might not be in good taste in terms of the views of the public. And we welcome that, because for us, at least when there is underspending, there should be valuable explanations that will justify the underspending. Because if there is no explanation, then for us, we take it as an injustice to those that were earmarked to have received that particular benefit from the spending. So on underspending, what measures would be taken that are clearly tabulated to avoid the underspending recurring? I know some of it, Chair, is not necessarily by the effort or actions of the department. It's based on projections and the uptake of the grant. But if there are any ways that they can be prevented, can maybe the department just take us through that particular efforts that they will be looking at? The last one, Chair, it's on the challenges relating to the payment of beneficiaries who do not have bank accounts. Are there any measures that the department is putting in place just to ensure that these ones are not also unfairly excluded? I know most people rely on cash send processes, e-wallet processes. There are mechanisms that in the country we are able to send money. Has the department thought of that and considered means and ways outside of the box to ensure there's those that are deserving do receive the grant that is earmarked for them? I will pause there, Chair, and once again, thank you for the comprehensive presentation. It is really assisting in our oversight work. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Matafa, Honorable Kaiso, please come in.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Minister and your team for this presentation before this committee. Chair, you'd understand I'm just trying to be short here because of what I said we discussed earlier. I'm trying to be brief here. I'm attracted by the last part of the paragraph of the presenter here around the issue of what is this term now? I've forgotten now this, but then it represents the overall growth in as far as, you know, the household income and all that stuff, you know, that we're moving forward, the nation moving forward or moving backward. I'll remember but then you said it is the figure that, yes, the Gini coefficient is 0.68. But after the implementation of the social grant since 2019, this changed to 0.65, and 0.68 is very, very high. And it says there's a long route to travel to reach the objective which are stated in the National Development Plan. And now it is quite clear, Chair, that the reduction in the Gini coefficient to 0.65 talks a lot on the impact of the grant, the SRD grant, sorry, SRD grant, which had on the poor. So now this it cannot be accepted, because obviously one would understand the reason which then resulted in this underspending, specifically after the Treasury had imposed stringent measures. It then reduced the number of recipients of the grants. So it will be prudent that now those measures actually, because the state has a responsibility to provide service to the poor and take care of the most vulnerable. So it won't make any sense that now that we since had a increased number of the recipients, all of a sudden now there are these stringent measures which are being imposed because of regulation. It resulted in a negative, impact on the Gini coefficient, as stated by the presenter in the last paragraphs. So it doesn't make sense to me. It does then suggest automatically, no, those measures have to be reviewed in order to realize the objective that we want to achieve. And that is to intervene when the most vulnerable are highly exposed, given the situation of the economy that it finds itself and which is declining, not performing to the maximum. And also, Chair, given the situation of the developments around the world, which also includes the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, which poses a threat of world recession. And I wonder what assessment or research has the department done with regard to the impact which has resulted after the stringent measures have affected distribution of all recipients of the grants. What type of research work has been done in as far as this is concerned, other than Gini coefficient? That one I would say I do understand that it actually has this impact in as far as Gini coefficient is concerned. And Chair, let me stop at that point. If there's any other, I think I'm covered by my colleagues who have previously spoken. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Peters.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Minister and the team from DSD, but also the CEO from SASA and all other agencies that probably because I joined the meeting late, I might not have heard when they were introduced. Chairperson, the other problem I have here is load shedding. So don't be surprised if I probably would have challenges with network later. I also want to join the colleagues who have appreciated the presentation that was made by DSD and SASSA, but equally so raise my concerns and worries with regard to the underspending in a department like DSD and SASSA in particular, with regard to the 1.769 billion that rand that was underspent, in particular in the area of the social relief of distress. And Chairperson, if the team from DSD and SASSA can remember, when this grant was introduced in 2020, this committee in particular raised concerns with regard to a situation which might emerge that would result in this particular type of situation where there is underspending in an important area like SRD, especially taking into consideration the number of poor people, the number of unemployed people, especially within the categories that SRD is supposed to cover. And also, Chairperson, I did not hear well what Honorable Matafa was saying, but it would be an indictment on us as a committee if we don't raise our concerns with regard to the money that has been reallocated from DSD to departments like defense and others, because DSD is supposed to be, or the Department of Social Development is supposed to be caring for the most vulnerable of society. And to hear that money has been diverted from this department is truly worrisome. And the minister and DG and their team need to be able to look into this particular matter, because the department is really supposed to be the key driver on the war on poverty. And department as the key custodian of the most vulnerable of society should look at what Honorable Kaizo was raising about South Africa being said to be the most unequal society in globally, and look at how we can work on reducing or look at poverty relief. This SRD is actually poverty relief and not necessarily poverty reduction, because social development is supposed to be working on relief, moving towards reduction, and ultimately getting to a situation where poverty is eradicated, working together with other departments and other stakeholders of the South African society. Chairperson, in my previous life, previous areas of responsibility, I had the honor and privilege to visit Malaysia, and in particular, the state of Selangor, where the governor of the state of Selangor impressed on us because at that particular stage, they indicated that they only had about 1,000 families or 1,000 households that was living in poverty. And they had a program on how to get that 1,000 out of poverty. Some of the programs that the equivalent of social development was working together with other departments, but also with local government in dealing with the war on poverty were really impressive. So I think we need to an Operation Pakisa on dealing with poverty and inequality. The other thing, Chairperson, is the issue related to the extension of the SRD. Chairperson, we heard in the MTB PBS, okay, what the minister was saying in his budget, midterm budget recently. indicating that there is work, or that they are going to extend the SRG beyond 2023 to 2024. I would believe that as this committee that is responsible for appropriations, we need to really impress on the Department of Social Development as well as National Treasury. And Social Development would engage National Treasury with regard to the committee's concerns, that we truly look at the SRD beyond the 2024 period, but also whilst looking at the SRD beyond 2024 period, we should be also publicly saying to the communities or society of South Africa on what the department is doing. And Minister, we are very impressed that the department has got work that they are busy with regard to basic income support. But I think we can know as honorable members and members of parliament and those who are in leadership in cabinet, but what about the general public? Are they aware that the department is working on this income support, and who else the department is working on with regard to this particular matter? The other thing, Chairperson, I would like to raise with a social development and SASSA in particular is the issue of the reduction of the pay points. Yes, it is important to look at the ability to manage the number of pay points, but there is the need for social development and SASSA, in particular SASSA, to look at how you make it easier for the people to have access. Yes, for us, it was good to stop that overnight of people at pay points and the challenges that they had with regard to dealing with cash. But remember that banks are not everywhere. And also remember that banks are closing their outlets and more relying on the ATMs, and which are not necessarily available everywhere. So SASSA, we are appealing to you to look at means to make it possible that our beneficiaries are able to access your services at a particular, but also, Chairperson, lastly, we have had an opportunity even last week on Friday to have Mobi.com presenting here. And I believe in the work that you are doing with the Basic in Support grant, you are also meeting with structures like that, and also taking into consideration their proposals that working together with Treasury, we can get to a situation that the wealthy are taxed to be able to get to a point where we can introduce an increase, a better increase in the child support grant and the old age grant, whilst working also on the basic income support. Chairperson, lastly, is there a possibility that because the payments for SRG this year came in during the June and July, or June and July, and I'm happy to hear that you have been able to catch up a CEO of SASSA, but is there a possibility of big payment, especially because you got the budget that was supposed to have started in April, and your payments and process for applications started in June? And I think it is important that probably that little back pay, you could consider, Minister, in your November, December type of payments. And I know that it's something that is going to need you to probably consult with your other colleagues. But for those who are beneficiaries of the SRG, they would really be happy with regard to this particular intervention. Lastly, Chairperson, this is the lastly, social workers that were said to be unemployed. There is need for social workers in the Department of Health through the hospitals. There is need for social workers in the Department of Correctional Services, but also justice, because they do work with the children's courts. I think it is important that the department can engage with these departments to make sure that the issue of unemployed social workers, who were trained with resources from your department minister, can be catered for and be addressed. We are addressing the compensation of employees in the Department of Education and Department of Health. And I would believe that there is an opportunity for you to enter in that particular space. And I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Peters. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. And let me welcome the presentation and good morning, Honorable Minister. My first question is, would you be able to create some communication platform with us public representatives and your departments? As public representatives, we often get, and I know that I do communicate with you, and I must thank you for your prompt responses and assistance. One of the few ministers that respond immediately and act. But I think what we're looking for—
Honorable Sheikh, I can vouch for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Chair, Honorable Minister, what I'm looking for is some line of communication between us and somebody in your department. So when concerns are raised by the general public, we don't need to inundate you with queries and concerns. There's somebody that we could deal with it, because lots of people on the ground, and we can't expect miracles. You know, when we decided to provide these social relief grants and assistance, we did not take into consideration that the department itself needs to capacitate itself, particularly with your IST system and everything else. But be that as it may, if we can create some communication platform, so we don't have to be sending you messages all the time, and that's why I think you have staff that can assist us, that might go a long way in alleviating some of the problems our people raise. Now, I want to go to some completely different. Yes, I do agree we are one of the most unequal societies in the world, but equally, we are one of the most unproductive societies in the world. So there's this perception here, we just sit and wait for handouts and things. What we're not doing, Chairperson, is creating an environment to create a more productive society. So my question to the department, and I know this doesn't entirely fall within your mandate, your responsibility is different to those that's supposed to create that environment. But I think being a minister in the cabinet, I'm sure that these matters can be open for discussion. How do we create an environment where people can become less dependent on social assistance and grants? Because the fact of the matter is this: nobody can survive with 350 rand, and it's worse if they have to go and draw those monies. It costs them money to even do that. So how can, with social development and other role players, try and create a more productive society? Even with these people that you're giving assistance, can this form of assistance in some way or the other change from monetary value to a more productive society where people can start earning more and getting back their dignity in any case? Now, having said that, Chairperson, this department is always going to be under pressure. And the pressure that they're going to be under is going to increase every year. Your population is increasing, your unemployment is increasing, the crime levels are increasing. 91,000 children gave birth to children last year. That is going to impact on this department. Let us be honest about it. And government is not going to be able to sustain on the long run the social relief distress grant. And now I know we got an election coming, so we're going to do all kinds of things. But I think we need to be honest and realistic. Can we sustain? Can people survive on 350 rand grant? Even if you increased it to 600 rand, can they survive? No. So what are we going to do together, collectively, try and create an environment where people can earn some money? I always say, rather take home 2,000 rand a month than looking for 4,000 and not getting anything at all and getting 350 rand instead. I think that's what we should do. Now, my question is something that I've discussed with you before, Minister, and I know that you're on hands-on dealing with it. Dysfunctional families, gender-based violence, the crime rate, which is impacting on your department. The way to go is to start it from school level, to identify through safety ambassadors and things in the schools, okay, where the children that are coming from dysfunctional families or problematic families, if that's the term I should use. So that timeously at a very early stage, you can pick them up. You got social workers, which many of them in this country are currently unemployed. And I know you have given an undertaking to take on a lot more of them. Thank you very much for that. So that social workers in those communities that the schools have identified, working together, can pay visits to these homes, address the challenges so that we can create a better society for the future. That will create, we will have less of a negative impact on social development. It will deal with the issues of crime, gender-based violence, substance abuse, a whole lot of that. We have to get to the grassroots of what is going on. Could you tell us what is your plan there about social workers, about together with, now I know the police department, like the city of Cape Town, have had a program, they've discontinued, I think, but we need collective engagement between the role players. Basic education must come in and others together with you so that you can put these teams, these safety ambassadors or whatever we can call them, or social upliftment ambassadors, whatever the name, so that they can identify timeously children where we are having problems so we can actually work with that. And then you need to roll out more social workers. You know, Chairperson and through Minister, I see these big placards all over, no bail for rapists, no bail for murderer. I ask again, how much have these NGOs and NPOs who are beneficiaries of billions of rands? And the truth is, Chairperson, there is no control measures or oversight on these people. They're getting money from all over the world. And the only thing they do is, well, I'm not saying all of them, but to a very large extent, go and grandstand, no bail and no this. What are you doing to identify timeously dysfunction? Because if you heard the stats, most of those rape victims are victims from perpetrators that are known to them. So why are we not picking these up, that these girls are being abused for over 10 years and 20 years and then getting murdered and things? Why can't we pick it up? Because the agenda is different. The focus of attention is not to create a better society. These people are getting monies, but we are not getting the results for it. There's no output. So I want to know, what is the department going to do to make sure there's greater accountability? Because you give them these certificates as NPO certificate, they go through SASSA to account for the monies that they receive and what actually are they doing. And they should be working hand in hand with the department to be able to identify these dysfunctional families and things. And they're not doing it. There's no point in coming after somebody's raped and it's too late to do anything about it. So that's the other thing that I thought I wanted to touch on. Now, the issue is, I know that you've reduced the number of pay points, yes. If you saw some of the recordings recently and reports of the number of people that are getting robbed outside ATM machines, it's increasing. As the unemployment rate is increasing, crime is also increasing. And these people are doing it blatantly in front of everybody. And older people particularly are vulnerable to these things. I'm not sure how we're going to actually deal with that issue of making people being able to access these grants, through some safe, secure means and things. Now, lots and lots of people are complaining that they are getting rejected because they might have had one income that came in 6 months ago or something like that. And they appear to be having difficulty in terms of communicating. They're not getting the responses and they're waiting. On the other hand, there's some great successes. Some of them that I've interviewed in, people have called us back to say, thank you very much. They now got their money. So there's a lot of good work being done. But Chairperson, what happens anyway? You get judged by what you don't do, not by what you do. So you can do all the good work. There's no gratitude. You just do one wrong. Here you are becoming the victim of it. So that's the thing. Now, my other question is budgetary constraints. Your department has got limited budget. How are you going to be able to deal with the challenges we face in giving out these social grants, providing this, ensuring there's enough social workers on the ground with every responsibility that you have? How are you going to be able, notwithstanding, of course, you've underspent as far as those social grants. I know you did give some explanation, but I think, and I think one of my colleagues was correct. If you underspent, those monies were made available for people. They did not get it timeously. Are you going to give them back pay, or what is it that you're going to do about that? I think for now, Chairperson, let me stop there. And then if it's okay with you, I'll come back a little later. But thank you very much. And let me thank the Minister for her intervention whenever I contacted her. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh. Is there another honorable member that I might have left out? No. Honorable Latafa, do you want to have any other addition? Quickly. Honorable Kaiso. Any take?
No, I'm covered, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Peters, anything from your side?
Just a small point. I wanted to find out whether the department has control over those interventions that they make when, like, for example, when families have got, like in the situation, okay, it's easier in the situation you have floods or disasters, but where there is no disaster declared, but you have incidences like the burning of houses and whatever, they used to be able to give some kind of relief in those type of situation. Is that program still in place? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members.
Sorry, Chair, I had one. I just put my hand up for one. I don't know if you got me there.
Okay, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know from the Minister, does your system, is it integrated enough where it's linked to SARS and all the other relevant authorities in the country, stakeholders, so that at a click of a button, you'll know the entire history of a person? Because when people are getting these grants and they're not entitled to it and things, surely the system, and why I'm saying this is this, you know, from a local level, you'll find people are employed or they have businesses, they're getting licenses, they should be linked to SARS, which should be linked to social development. Do we have such a system that's coordinated that all these relevant departments where it's necessary can pick up through an ID number of a specific person all the relevant information that makes it a lot easier for you to then decide, is this person entitled to this grants or not?
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh. Honorable members, let me join you in thanking the Minister and the team from the department and from the agencies for the presentations that they've shared with us. Obviously, there's a lot that has been achieved, but because of the nature of this department, there are also a number of things that the honorable members are raising, which need your consideration. Like just to follow up with my questions, social development, it's a national competence. I just want to check that in the spirit of a cooperative governance, do you work with the provincial and local governments? And if yes, what type of cooperation that you, or what type of work that you do together? Perhaps just to make a comment, and honorable members have been touching on this one. I was just saying that there's always a concern about the bailing out of SOEs just from the fiscus, called a bottomless pit, right? But surely you'd agree that the optics of money that is bailing out the SOEs coming from social development, it's even more worrisome. The optics is just bad. Perhaps it's not really yourselves. I think it's an area that we should raise with National Treasury, honorable members. I think we need to park that one. But if you want to comment on it, please do so, because it creates an impression there where we created conditions, raised the means test, so that many people can be out, and then we're seen taking money from social development to the SOEs. Perhaps it's something that we may want to raise with National Treasury. A number of honorable members here have said, can we consider back pay, especially where we're responsible for people not being able to access their grants. For instance, the fact that we started in June, it was not because of them. It was because of our systems, not as DSD, but as government. So for those 3 months, they didn't get money, but then we're able to verify. So I'm just checking that what will stop us from making a back pay to those people, because we know that they qualified, especially those who qualified, that we must pay back, pay back the money which they are entitled to. I think is a strong suggestion that we're making. Please share with us if there are any difficulties, because we are going to be very, that's the proposal that we are going to make. I heard DSD saying that you have got an unfunded mandate where you must start paying more people, right? Where you must pay more people, but the administration budget doesn't follow that, the number that you are having. But that will happen when from your side you raise a hand and say, I've got 6 billion rand savings. I know the 6 billion rand that you are talking about was a SASSA budget. But if I were in your shoes, I think that's why I was going to argue very strongly that at least part of that money should try and fund the mandate that you are giving us, rather than shifting the money to the SOEs. But I would like to hear what you have to say on that. Again, I think I would like, Minister, that we change this language, especially when it comes to social development of savings, because again, when people hear that how there was money that was saved in this department when we're in this situation, I think let's find another way of calling it. The language of savings, acting DGCO at it. I think let's find another language. It doesn't come out good when poverty, unemployment, and people are living below poverty to timeline, and then we talk about savings. Another question: the state of the post office. How does it impact on your ability to disperse grants? Again, the people who were excluded because of problems at the banks. So I'm sure that will be corrected, or that has been corrected. But again, I'm arguing from where I'm seated that those people must be paid, not from the time when that problem has been resolved, but it must go back from the time when they were supposed to get that money. What's the problem about that? And the general question, when are all these monies that were not spent, why didn't you apply for environments to deal with the number of challenges that, for instance, in the DSD portfolio are there? Honorable Peter spoke about the question of social workers and many other interventions which a department like yourselves can make. So why didn't you apply for environments rather than taking money out of the department? I think, Honorable Minister, that's where we'll end. And can you please come in again? You command, and I'm deliberately using command because your minister is a soldier, so she'll understand very well what I'm saying. Minister, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to all the members who've been here. What I wanted to ask, Chair, I didn't know whether any of the officials wanted to speak before I come in. if there are still some questions they might want to talk to.
Yes, Honorable Minister, you may decide when you come, if you ask them to come in first and then you are the last one.
Yes, please. I'd rather ask them to speak and respond to some of the issues that you just spoke to now, if need be. If I can just ask the DG to command that side.
Command icon. Okay. Your team.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I'm not sure if I'm audible.
Very much so. Very much so. We can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me do it this way. Let me first ask Peter to come in on the question that was asked around the impact of NPOs or creating greater accountability for NPOs together with Tabani. And then we'll go to SASSA, if you could respond, and then I will come back here to Fani and to Brenda, and then I will make a few comments as well, Honorable Chair. So Peter, can you go first? Okay, Tabani, you go.
Thanks. Thank you, Excellent Teacher. Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. I think it's common cause that as government, most of our services, of course, are provided through the partnership that we have with the civil society organization in the form of NPOs for the provision of some of the essential services. And in the main, the larger proportion would be social services, welfare, and through the provinces, of course, we do fund some of them. And the impact that you are able to make is that as government, they are assisting us to reach some of the areas that it would be not easy for us as government to reach. And they are able to make sure that they provide essential service on the behalf of government. And of course, there are some of the legislative framework that assist us in terms of that, including the funding model and some of the policies that are there. And of course, it is a very interesting relations. You understand, Chairperson recently held a presidential social sector summit where it further assisted us to forge more partnership with the civil society organization, and we continue to do so. They also came very handy during some of the issues. It could come to issues of gender-based violence, issues of social ills, including substance abuse. They are very much assisting in terms of those, but also during some of the unfortunate incidences, such as the COVID-19, the recent disasters. It was the civil society organization that were able to assist us. Those are the impacts that we are able to register through working with them. And of course, we continue to forge those partnerships. And it's also part of our vision as this department that as we're able to provide the services, we want to make sure that we forge and strengthen the relations that we have with the civil society organization. Thank you, Chairperson.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tabani. And I think the civil society essentially we do them an extension of the work that we do to ensure that we have greater reach on the ground. We are trying to, Honorable Sheikh Imam, to create a much better level of accountability at all levels, particularly at the provincial level, because that's where the bulk of the funding towards NGOs go. And we're trying to really find a much more coherent way of ensuring that we are able to, because we cannot pay civil society organizations unless they're reported. So we're trying to make that okay, can I then ask the CEO of SASSA to come in and the colleagues from SASSA quickly?
Thank you very much, DG. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. I will highlight key specific areas, and then Brenton on the grant side will talk to the other questions. The one issue that I thought was important for us to highlight is the fact that we're beginning to explore opportunities of ensuring that we create better livelihoods for our social grant beneficiaries. We've just started, we've been engaging with an NGO, an international NGO, together with a local NGO for us to do a pilot of 7 sites, whereby we're going to be looking at creating different pathways for different social grant beneficiaries. We're going to focus initially on the child support grant beneficiaries, which would be the mothers that are the mothers of the children. And 7 sites have been identified in 3 provinces, and based on those pilots, would then look at what it is that we need to do better or to actually massify. We also have a partnership already with SASOL, whereby we're looking at some of their programs in terms of 2 particular areas in Free State, because that's where they are, but also looking at how do we massify the programs that they already have in terms of ensuring that they create better livelihoods, specifically for social grant beneficiaries. So we've started the work, which is part of the work that is the work that Minister is expected to perform on in any case. So this has started in these 7 areas. So what's exciting is that in one of the provinces, commitment has been made that they also want to take an additional side over and above what we are going to be doing with the NGO, because the more we spread, the better impact that we will have. So we're starting with 3 provinces. So that's the exciting bit. The one other question that was raised by Honorable Imam was on the issue of the integrated system. The system is not integrated currently, but we're able to go and connect with the different institutions for us to get data before we can assess individuals for them to qualify for a grant, which is, again, a new process that we've started, which we believe will help us even in terms of our traditional grants that we actually do. The other question that was raised by Member Dipuo was on the normal SRD, which we used to do, which we still do. It's just to indicate, Mem Dipuo, that we still do in cases where there's indigent people beyond just the 350 would identify those people, but also in some instances they would go to a branch, a local office, and then apply there and would definitely be able to consider that. So those are areas that we continue to focus on. On the issue of the pay points, we do agree that there's a need for people to be able to transact closer to where they are, rather than them actually moving to the town. We've moved a great deal in terms of ensuring that our people can be able to access their grants anytime in different environments, but we are beginning to explore together with our partner, which is the Post Bank, to look at how can we enable the people, the retailers in our communities, for them to be able to have the technology that they require for them to be able to provide an opportunity to individuals to be able to transact in spaza shops and in general dealerships that exist closer to our communities. The challenge, again, that we have as a country is the fact that most of the spaza shops, unfortunately, are not currently under the auspices of local people. And that's an area that I believe on the small business side, they are exploring to make sure that all the small businesses are actually registered so that we can be able to know and understand as to what support we need to provide. I'll leave the other questions to Brenton to respond to on the grant side. Over to you, Brenton.
Thanks, CEO. I believe there was quite a few questions on the grants, but let me start with them from the top. So one question was, besides the loss of the 3 million applicants, what other challenges the applicants are faced with? So I think one of the biggest challenges in this iteration of the grant is sort of understanding how the means test works. So in the previous iteration of the grant, we didn't really have a means test. We only really used a means test when the applicant appealed. And in this round, we used a means test, which is now set at the food poverty line for the first time. And it looks at all income that the person receives. And I think many applicants don't really realize that we do check their bank accounts. We check all bank accounts, not just necessarily the one that they choose to have their money paid into. And so that does create a lot of queries around that, where applicants, would be telling us, for example, here's my bank X statement, and it says, you can see there's no money in it, but then we have to go back to them and say, but please give us your bank Y and your bank Z statement. But we also, not only bank statements, we also look at e-wallet transfers, etc. And so that does then, it does rule out quite a lot of applicants who do have money coming in. In terms of whether or not we've tried to determine with the 3 million or so, whether or not they've been unfairly excluded, I think that's a little bit more difficult to the statement unfairly would probably be a very subjective statement. And so, like I mentioned earlier on, and we are prepared, as Minister said earlier when she said we opened the meeting, or the discussion, she said we are preparing a report for her. But one of the things that will come out there is to sort of show how the trend of this grant has been over 3 years. So in the very beginning, you would have noticed that we have made a very generous provision in the very first 6 months of the disaster, during the state of disaster, and we reached almost 13 million people during that particular phase. That then came down after 6 months to 6 million people, and then eventually the grant was stopped for a period of about 3 months. Then the grant increased again to 11 million people, came down to 6 million again, and then grew to about 7 million. So we do see this sort of over the trend of this grant, quite a erratic increase, decrease in numbers. And this grant is a very different grant from other grants. So if you look at our other grants, like our child support grant, I think that was the first grant we implemented in our democracy. We went from nothing, 0, to 7.5 million people in about 15 years. And that is sort of the normal transition of how the social grants historically has grown. Whereas this grant, I think we mustn't forget the context. It was implemented in a state of disaster. So we started with a very high number. It was a very sort of almost, I would say, quasi-universal kind of grant. Most people who asked for it got it, with only checks to really exclude very high income people. Those, for example, that you'd find on SARS databases, NUIF and government employees and so forth. But then if you look at the budget, you'll see a slight, it started with a big 50 billion rand budget, and it eventually came down to I think it was 30 odd last year. And if one looks at the current spending trends, it will also be around about 30 this year. So there is sort of that difference where you started big and you're almost now trying to narrow it to, as one of the members says, try and focus on your most vulnerable groups. Now, the question is then, are those below the food poverty line the most vulnerable group that you want to target, which is where the grant is currently set, or is that food poverty line too restrictive and you now want to say, let's rather target the poverty line or maybe minimum wage or higher means test threshold. In terms of analysis, I think I'll leave that one to DSD. I believe they have done some work, economic modeling and so forth, and they will be launching a report on that soon. In terms of cash send or methods other than bank payments, so bank payments are our predominant method of paying. It is the most secure method of paying. We have introduced cash sends, e-wallets, all sorts of mobile payments last year. And as mentioned, we only really reached about 40,000 people. This year, we already grown to about 100,000. This is, however, the more difficult method of payment because it's not easy to link a person's cell phone number to a person's identity. Unlike a bank account, because banks are required to they call it know your client, like FICA. You know that when you pay money to that person's bank account, that bank has made sure that that ID number or that person belongs to that bank account. So we can very confidently pay money into a bank account. If we can't confidently pay money onto a mobile number, it's a lot more difficult to have the same level of confidence because even though we have RICA in South Africa, it is really only contract users that do a proper RICA. Everyone using prepaid numbers don't really RICA properly. And so a lot of cell phone number verification fails. And most of our clients are prepaid customers, they're not contract customers. So it is very difficult to determine that cell phone number X belongs to ID number X. And that results in a lot of cash send verification failures, and then we have to ask those clients, please go back to a bank to get or give us your bank account, because many times clients do also have bank accounts. But again, we do want to grow this, so we introduced it last year. We want to use this technology much more, but we also need to deal with the challenges of the relative uncertainty about SIM numbers, because the processes of linking SIM numbers to ID numbers and being confident that you're paying the right person is a lot more difficult. In terms of the question around pay points and the question around the post office, or the situation at the post office, and how does that impact our ability to pay grants. We are very dependent on the post office at the moment. As you know, not necessarily the post office, but the post bank, as about 70% of our clients are paid through this mechanism. We do have a large portion of clients that use other banks. And I'm talking about normal grants, not the SRD. With the SRD, our dependence is a lot less on the post office. And we made a major shift this year from previously, where we were reliant on the post office, and really just appealing to beneficiaries, please use your own bank accounts, so that we're not that reliant on the post office, knowing that the post office is not necessarily the most stable organization at the moment. But with that being said, 96% of our clients that get paid through this mechanism, through this contract we have with the post office, are actually paid into a post bank account, and they are relatively secure, except over the last month we've had now challenges even in that space, and that is very worrying. And so, but also just the 4% that relies on cash and SAPO branches, we do realize we're going to have to look at in the sort of medium term at an alternative intervention, in case the post office will not, in case they can't provide a reliable service going forward in that particular space. Also, then coming to the cash pay points, it's very, very costly for us to pay cash. We pay roughly 108, just over almost 190 rands. I think it's 188 rands per payment. So if you're getting a child support grant of 480 rands, about a third of that we have just to take cash to you. That we have to pay 180 rands for that. And so we need to look at different mechanisms to cash payments, especially in areas where there are alternatives around. We do realize that there are areas that there's just nothing, and there we will have to maintain those cash payments. But areas where there are alternatives, we need to start moving beneficiaries into those alternatives, as opposed to paying that huge fee just to get cash to the person. Plus, also, even in areas where there are no payments, we also need to start working with banks, with the Post Bank in particular, as a state bank and has an interest in banking the unbanked, and as well as economic activities such as your spaza shops and other merchants that may be operating in these areas, and bringing them into, might not be a banking environment, but into a cashless kind of transacting environment, and try to remove as much cash out of the environment as possible, given the high cost of cash, as well as the huge risk that comes around with carting such large amounts of cash across the country. In terms of, so I think I've answered the pay points. So I think the last big question then, and almost all the members asked this question, is around the back pay. We have back paid everybody. So when we started in June, we then went back and we assessed you for April, we assessed you for May, we assessed you for July, June, and so forth. And then we back paid you. If you qualified in April, we back paid you in April. If you qualified in May, we back paid you to May. and so all back pay has been paid out already. There are just one group of people which are child support grant beneficiaries. There was a slight error we had with the bank means test, where we incorrectly included CSG income into the bank means test for the months of April, May, June, and July. We fixed that in August, and we are currently going back and reassessing everyone from April to July, and we'll also be back paying them probably in the months of November, or if we don't get it all done this month, we'll definitely get it done next month. Thanks, Chairperson. Oh, sorry, back to you, DG.
Thank you very much, Brenton, for a very detailed explanation. Let me ask Fanny, and immediately after Fanny, Brenda, and then I will come to the Minister.
Thanks, DG. Two areas. We do acknowledge the budget constraints, and unfortunately, we all have to, as government departments, go to the National Treasury to request additional funding. We have been successful in the past, especially for the 350 grant, where there was intervention by our Minister to the Minister of Finance. This is why the 350 has been extended for another year. So, but in terms of the other, the fiscus is quite constrained. So we have submitted funding requests to the National Treasury as part of this executive process, especially for the social service professions. There's a lot of other departments and for the appointment of such, we are waiting the outcome of that. In terms of the environments, Chairperson, it's quite difficult. You know, if Treasury tells us on an annual basis, this is your budget for the financial year, you need to obey to the rules in terms of the National Treasury at the PFMA. It makes it quite difficult for us to do certain environments, especially if we look at transfer payments where the SRD is currently under. It's quite clear in terms of the PFMA that this funding may not be used for anything else. You know, so transfer payments, even the compensation of employees, they are quite strict on the rules that if you want to shift any of this funding, it has to go through the National Treasury process. But for the transfers in terms of the social grants, it's exclusively appropriated in Cabinet, and they've got control over this funding. So even if we go to the National Treasury to say, listen, we want to utilize this funding for something else, they will not support it. They sort of like in control of this funding. You know, so if you look at our allocation that we have, the 248 billion for the financial year, 247 billion is actually for transfers in terms of this, which goes to grants and the SASA, the NBA, and some of our national councils. We actually don't have any control to utilize that for something, anything else than what it was appropriated for. So we do take the notion that we want to, if it's environments, we will surely take it up with Treasury. Maybe in the 2024 MTF process, if we have our numbers in order, to look at what will the cost be for our social grants, and if it's within our space to shift some of that funding, we'll make a case to Treasury to shift it somewhere else. But at this stage, we're governed by PFMA at the National Treasury in terms of this, so we're not allowed to use it for anything else. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brenda. If you could deal with the Gini coefficiency as well as the appeals matter. Brenda?
All right, okay. Let me start with the appeals matter. The question was, besides the appeals, is there any other thing that the department is doing to check whether the people were unfairly steered? The numbers that we have, the way we do appeals, obviously we can only deal with appeals of people who have actually submitted appeals. But the numbers suggest to us that a large number of people who were excluded, the primary reason for their exclusion was that they had money, they had inflow of money into their bank accounts. I think one of the things that has happened is a lot of people did not understand that we would not only check the bank account that they submitted when they applied, but SASSA has contracts with banks, so they would be able to check against their income. against the ID, all the bank accounts that an individual might have. So in that regard, we would then, while you might have submitted a bank account that has no money in it, when SASSA checks, they check all the other bank accounts that are in your name or in that ID number, and they will then find money in some of those accounts and then exclude on that basis. This is the correct use, this is the correct interpretation of the regulation. However, we are aware, we don't have the numbers because this requires some qualitative research for us to do in order to say how many other people were excluded because of, for example, the money that we identified in their accounts not being their own money, being money for other things. If somebody was giving them money to go and do a transaction on their behalf and so on, those sort of things we will not be able to ascertain. But we are aware that in some households, there might be a person who has a bank account, and then that person's bank account is used to transact on behalf of the family. We don't have a good sense of that. It's not possible for us to be able to quantify it. So in that regard, we would need to do qualitative work. But we are able to show from the appeal data that when people are appeal, they indicate the reason for their appeal, and we are able to see the extent to which they are appealed. Insofar as the results so far of the appeal that we have looked at, we found that about 3%, in terms of SASSA's assessment, the numbers of people who actually, who we find to be unfairly excluded is only about 3% of the numbers of people who do apply. So we think in general, the way in which SASSA has applied the regulations is quite accurate to that extent. Of course, it doesn't mean that there are people who need money but are not getting it. That one has to do with the way where we set up the means test. So that's in regard to that matter. The slide that we are showing now is a slide that we had shared before, I think, with the committee, but I think it bears explaining again on the question of what has the impact been of the grants on economic recovery. When the grant was implemented initially, when the relief measures were implemented, we can say with confidence that it has had it actually had a massive impact on poverty reduction. And also an inequality. The inequality result was quite surprising to us. And I want to link this to the point that Honorable Peters was raising around, should we not have an Operation Pakiza to deal with poverty? So the interventions that were done between March and June, at the beginning of the COVID intervention, if you look at that slide, you will see on the one with the blue shade, the column on the left speaks to the different poverty levels. First, there's the FPL, which is the food poverty line. And then the second one is LVPL, lower bound poverty line. And then the other one is the upper bound poverty line. These are different measures of poverty. And the way that these are used is that SA estimates every year what is the minimum level of income or money that a person needs in order to be able to, for example, in terms of the food poverty line, it was 595. That is the minimum amount of money that an individual would need to be able to buy a basket of goods for them to be able to just eat. So that food poverty line is that minimum. Now, we found that at the beginning of March, the number of people, the proportion of people who were living or who had income that was below that food poverty line was 20.6%. If government had done nothing when COVID set in, if government had done nothing, then the levels of poverty, the number of people, the proportion of people living below that food poverty line would have risen to 32%, which is the number shown on the last column. So I'm just going to talk only about the first one. So if we had done nothing, the poverty proportion would have moved from 20% to 32%. That's very significant. But because of the interventions that government did, we see the column just left of the last one. It shows that actually the proportion of people went down to 18.8%. Just through those interventions, the increases to the introduction of the SRG grant and the increases to the different grants, the additional amounts that we're giving. So we see that if really we commit, just by increasing those allocations, the value of those grants and introducing the child support grant, introducing the SRG grant, we would be able to reduce poverty very significantly to even below what it was before COVID-19. So that's the first part of this. The lower table shows what the impact was on inequality. Through the same interventions, we started at that bottom row at 0.670. So what did you what did you do?
I rounded it off.
You rounded it off here to 0.68. That's where the Gini coefficient is, which is a measure of inequality in the country, income inequality. Now, with the interventions that happened between March and June, the income inequality declined so significantly to 0.613. Now, when you think about this, the target for the country in terms of the NDP target of 2030 is that it should go down to 0.60. It means that if we just were to implement these interventions that we did, we could reach the 2030 target now. It's just a matter of what is government's commitment to deal with poverty and where is it prioritized in the order of government expenditure. But so in terms of thinking about this operation particular to do with poverty and inequality, we are saying the grants program presents one of the key elements through which government can actually intervene to deal with poverty and to deal with inequality. So that's the key thing that we wanted to raise around this table. But obviously we have to engage with the National Treasury. The rules that we set up in the last iteration have resulted in reducing some of this positive impact that we have had, because we were forced to introduce additional criteria that excluded people who were benefiting in this initial period. So it's possible to say, let's learn lessons from this, what we achieved here. Let's see in the changes that were done that resulted in fewer people getting the grant. What can we do as government? How much additional fiscal commitment can we make in order to achieve this target sooner rather than later? Thanks.
No, thanks, Brenda. And I think the moral of the story on this particular slide is certainly to say government intervention, social intervention has been quite significant and can certainly lead us to the aspirations that we have in terms of the National Development Plan. But I think coupled with this, what is really urgent and required, and I think to Honorable Sheikh Imam's point and the Chairperson's point, is a need for much more labor active markets policies, and I think that will be labor active market policies. I think that that's important. If we have that, we're able to harness this much deeper, and certainly would be able to even surpass the NDP targets of 0.60. And I think also linked to this is to ensure that we link grants to skills development and some level of job opportunities. And indeed, I tend to agree with honourable members that no one would want to survive on the grant because it's such a low number. And if a person is given an opportunity to work, certainly I think that person will take the opportunity to work because they would earn much more money and they'll be able to take care of themselves and indeed their household in a much better way. So I agree with that. Let me just share another slide with you, honourable members. Excuse me. So this slide, and I must apologize, Chair, that the questions led us to put this up for you quickly. This slide really talks to a rapid assessment that we did on the impact of COVID-19 SRD. Now, this was a rapid assessment, but we have done another 3 or 4 pieces of research or so, looking at very specific areas which we would gladly share with your good selves. If you look at the top graph, it really just talks to what people used the SRD 350 grant for. And you would see that it was largely for food and services, including electricity, data, and transport, etc. And all of these goods, can support local economies. And to a large extent, a lot of people who were utilizing these were utilizing them within the context, or rather within their districts. Because they were, they wouldn't go very far, say for really rural areas where they would have to travel some distance and so on. But I think that with having the retailers that were able to assist us in paying, in being able for people to access grants, it's been useful. But I think what is significant is that we do certainly need to find a much more wider payments channel. Or much more broader payments channel that will make it much more easier for people to access grants. Of course, Brenton spoke about the sponsorship option. Those, of course, that are locally owned in the main. And I think that what we're also looking at, we must explore reasons why M-Pesa works in Kenya so significantly, and yet it's not working. It's not working effectively, or didn't rather, when we tried it as effectively in South Africa. We must explore these reasons and find out why. In Zimbabwe, actually, is it Zimbabwe? Yes.
DG,
Chair.
don't start with the new. Don't start with the new presentation. Just make a point in you're making those slides.
Okay. All right. No, thanks, Chair. So yeah, let me leave the utilization part and we can share this information with you. And then on a survey that was done on a number of people, we asked whether they did the grant make a difference, and more than 88% said indeed they did make a difference. 7% were unsure, and 4% responded positively. Now, let me just quickly close on just one or two questions very quickly. There was a question around the reallocation, and I think the reallocation was largely driven by Treasury, but there's a lesson that we've learned that we have to play a much more active role in this process and be much more robust to protect the poor in the main. And I think, Chair, to your point, we don't want a narrative, a kind of narrative that says, you took money from the poorest people to save SOEs. That's not the narrative that we want to put out there. And I think we must be much more alert to avoiding such challenges as we move forward. On the question on whether we are working with the provincial governments, indeed, we have concurrent functions with the provincial governments, but we also have cooperation areas of cooperation, but we know that the implementation of our work largely takes place at provincial level, and we have governance structures to which we also operate in and take matters forward in that regard. And then I think there was a question around whether, if without a disaster being declared, whether there could be support rendered, and I think the answer is certainly yes. In that role, people can apply for the normal SRD. There was then a question around unfunded mandates. I agree. We do have a number of unfunded mandates. For example, the issue of homelessness, the issue of shelters, in some aspects of disasters, I suppose, are all areas that are unfunded. But in addition to that, historically, social development has been very underfunded to carry out a range of its tasks that it was intended to do. I think we've noted and certainly agree with the suggestion by the chair around the changing language. I think we've certainly taken note of that, and we will work towards that end. Then just lastly, a question on communication platforms. That is something we will definitely look into. We already have one citizens engagement platform that we work with, and I think we can just add a specific sort of world within the platform where we could have that interaction with the members of parliament. But in the short term, what we can do is share with the secretariat the names of colleagues who would be able to be reachable and provide responses as required. I think I've dealt with creating a productive society. We agree with that. Yes, we are trying to, there's something that we call NISPIS, which is the National Integrated Social Protection Information System. And the idea is to have a single view of all citizens. That we are currently doing for the integrated justice system. And already there's some aspect that we've linked, some parts that we've linked and integrated. But I think as I think Brenton indicated, there is some data sharing agreements already that we have that assist us to pick up fraud through the payments of grants. So there are some institutions, SARS, NSFAS, UIF, and a few others that we're already integrating with, but there's certainly a need for us to integrate much more. Before COVID, actually, we found that people could apply for a road accident fund and apply for SASSA and other social protection measures without being picked up. And I think COVID has assisted us to certainly align and link our data sets in a much more effective way. On the issue of social workers, certainly, this is a cry that we've been putting out to Treasury for a significant amount of time now. There is a bid that we've submitted now to the Treasury that they are looking at, and we are going to be getting guidance from that in terms of ensuring that in the next financial cycle, we are able to embed this aspect of the deployment of social workers, and we have certainly been engaging honorable members with, in fact, we have an interdepartmental forum that we formed with the departments that Honorable Peters actually mentioned, including a few others. So there is a plan in place, and we are working towards ensuring that that plan is effectively implemented as soon as possible and as and when the budget is allocated. But this is something that we have been persistent on together with the Treasury. I think the rule or the principle around the payments of those who have not received grants at the inception, there is a principle that we operate on, which is you are paid the grant from the day or the month in which you apply. So if you applied in June, even if you're only approved a month later, or there's some challenges in 2 months later, we certainly pay retrospectively to that point. And we have certainly done this, honorable members, to the point where those who applied in the current iteration in the first 3 or 4 months we struggle to pay, we've paid all of those, and we can confirm that indeed. And then, yes, certainly we welcome the point around an extension that is beyond the year. I think that's important. We are working towards a basic income support grant, and I think there's some information that we'll share. And indeed, I think the Minister may want to invite honorable members to some of the engagement platforms that we'll be having around the basic income grant, and to put that forward. We've taken note of the need to ensure that we provide much more information to communities around what we're doing on the basic income grant, and I think that's very much welcome, and we'll work towards that end and ensure that we put that in place accordingly. So I think, Honourable Chair, let me leave it at that, and just certainly thank honourable members for the questions posed. If we've missed anything, we'll be able to come back. Thank you very much.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm switching off my video again. Of course, okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you to the honorable members also for the questions and for absorbing all that information. I think you were right when you were now stopping my ADG to say let it not be a new presentation altogether. The presentations have been done already. Chair, the last issue that the DG spoke to in particular of the basic income support grant is something that as a department and as myself and the DMS executive, we're taking very seriously. And we want to mobilize as many as possible to support us in this, because the 350, we see it as a stepping stone towards that. But also, we think that this government, being a caring government, really needs to pay greater attention to this issue, because there's just too many people out there who don't even have the money to even go out and look for jobs, who do not have the money to even go to submit their CVs and all that anywhere else. So may I thank you all for the opportunity given to the department. We are always grateful to honorable members asking us the hard questions. And as we live here, we go to look for better solutions in serving our people and making it easy in serving our people, Chairperson. I wish to thank you very much without taking too much time, because I think that the officials responded to the questions. Thank you so much.
Honorable Minister and the team, thank you. Perhaps parting shots from our side. I think Acting DG, thank you for that clarification that you do effective back pay. I think that's important, whether it's caused by the banks or it's caused by ourselves. I think it's important that we shouldn't punish our people for something that we're supposed to have dealt with. When I'm saying we, I'm talking us as government, be it National Treasury or DSD or whoever is involved. I think another point, all members, that we must take up with the Minister, National Treasury, Minister of Finance. It's a simple economics, inflation adjustment of 350 grand. That what was 350, a basket of goods that you could have bought with 350 when we started with the inflation rate that is we're having. it's two different things. So I think the argument of inflation adjustment of 350, so that in real terms it remains 350. The National Treasury would understand that. And again, we are also taking the point of getting certainty around the 3-year horizon, while government is working on whatever final outcome will come up with of a basic income support or whatever. So, but there should be some certainty for the recipients, but again, even just to allow the department to properly plan, and as it also, because when you go to a service providers, you can only get them for a year, and there are implications, there are even cost implications for that. Then, Minister, I think listening at the impact of just the 350 grant, but I'm sure there's also impact of other grants that we take out. Let's accept, I think we've always said that one of the problems that we're having in government in general, it's communications. We don't communicate our successes and what we do and the impact that we are doing. For instance, we had to squeeze out this information even from the presentation, whereas this is a good story to tell in wherever you come from, right? So I think that's one. Let's try to improve communication, but also having said that, let's also know who are communicating to the recipients. If you are going to talk about the Gini coefficient to our people, talk about the lower bound poverty line, upper bound poverty line, and so on, is to some of our people, it's especially our target market. Some of the people have not been to school and so on, and those who have been to school have never dealt with these things. I think we must, Minister, try to speak the language that everybody would understand. So two things: communication and the type of language that we use when we communicate. As we said at the beginning, and we have heard all members saying this, Minister, thank you very much for always availing yourself and with your full bench from the acting DG, CEOs, SASA and NDA, CFOs, and so on. We really appreciate it. We don't get a situation where people say, no, I must go and get the CEO or get the CFO who's not on the platform. We really thank you for with your team. Honorable members, Minister and your team, you may be excused, but if you want to remain on the platform, we are a transparent organization or committee. We still have got other things that we are dealing with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm leaving.
Let's see. Mashile.
Yes, Chair.
The minutes of the 11th of November 22 were sent out. Can I have the mover for their adoption, oral members? Mover for the adoption of 11 November 2022.
Chairperson, I'm trying to check whether I was in the meeting. I'm in the dark here.
Moves, Chair.
You were, as far as I know,
I
just
second.
yeah. Okay. Honorable Taiso moves and Honorable Peters second. Thank you. Then let's go to the minutes of the 15th of November. Honorable members. Minutes of 15th November.
Chair.
Honorable Taiso moves, seconder.
I second, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Peters, you second. Thank you. The minutes of the 15th of November, 2022 are duly adopted. Agenda item number 6, Mashile.
Yes, Chair, it's the consideration of the report. Let me flight it on the screen.
Where we don't have that in my agenda.
Which
Chair,
report?
Eh? I don't.
it's in the agenda, Chair.
So why did you allow me to go to the minutes and leave that one?
No, I thought we'd come to it, Chairperson, that we had already started on that. It
No,
will be recorded as such in the minutes.
Our members, can we leave the adoption of the report for now? I want to postpone it.
Yes, I concur, Chair. Let's leave this part of the report. We'll come back to it at the later stage. I want to propose.
Thank you. It's because I know that our members have they had to rush somewhere after this. So let's Mashile, let's hold on to the report. We'll find another day to.
Yes.
Okay. And announcements and correspondence.
Yes, Chair. Good afternoon, and all honorable members. Just to announce that we had received an apology from Ms. Ntlangwini after the meeting had commenced. And secondly, the Secretariat announces that the application for the study tour has been approved. So we are busy with the financials, and please be informed that the flight ticket and all details will be sent to the members in due course. Still concerning the issue of the study tour, please be informed that there are members who have not submitted their abridged version of the CV. So those members who have not submitted their CVs are urged to do so before the end of the business day. The next meeting will be on Tuesday next week. We are meeting with COCTA. The link will be sent in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mashile. And I think one announcement that we should just add there is the question of, I think there were forms that were sent for insurance, were asked to sign the forms, that is flying insurance or traveling insurance. Okay, thank you. All members, this brings us to the end of this meeting, and thank you very much for the engagement. This is a very important department, and I think there are things that we have highlighted, and let's not lose them as we draft our report. Thank you, all members. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and enjoy.